Lately, I've been doing a lot of typing, much more than usual. And most of my typing has involved planning and preparing devotional and worship materials. And while I do a lot of that during the normal times, the quarantine has significantly increased the need for and the amount of the written materials that I've needed to produce. Fortunately, I've been a writer and an editor and a communicator and an administrator for many years, and typing is something that I can do relatively quickly and accurately. Except for that the last week or so, when I've noticed that nearly every time that I type the words gospel text, T-E-X-T, my finger slips or autocorrect takes over, and what shows up on the screen is gospel test, T-E-S-T. After several days and numerous times of this happening, I began to wonder, what am I to make of this? Is someone trying to tell me something? Now, I didn't think too hard about it until I began to prepare for this Maundy Thursday and began a study of the gospel text assigned for today. And so I wondered as I read it, is this the gospel test? Jesus knew that his hour had come. Time was running out. But Jesus kept doing what he always did when he was with his disciples. He taught them about what it means to live in a covenant with God, what it means to be his follower. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus had taught them this by telling them parables, by explaining the authentic intent of the law, by his actions and interactions with people. Over and over again, Jesus taught his disciples just one lesson, that we are to love God and we are to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. And everyone is our neighbor, everyone, regardless of ethnicity or nationality or status in life or condition. Jesus touched and healed and fed and cared for anyone in need. That was always the lesson. Even when Jesus' hour had come, it was still the lesson. And now it came with a demonstration. For I have set an example that you should do as I have done to you. Care for one another. Care for one another like a servant washes the feet of a master. Do it because you have to. Do it because I tell you you have to do it. Watch me, and now you do it. Love each other. Care for each other. It's not an option. Over and over again, it was the same lesson. And now it was the last lesson. Had the disciples had a hard time leaning into this way of living life? Had they questioned Jesus about it? Had they discussed it among themselves? Did it just not make sense to them? Did Jesus not realize exactly how hard it is to love and to care for some people? Sure, it was easy for Jesus. He's the Son of God. Had the disciples wondered if Jesus expected them to be God too? Was that what Jesus was getting at? Be like God? I don't think so. Jesus did not spend his final moments with them teaching the disciples how to perform miraculous feats that defy the laws of nature. He didn't give them the powers of omniscience or clairvoyance or the ability to stop a speeding train. Jesus didn't expect them to be God. He expected them to be human. Dr. Ira Byock is a physician and one of the founders of the hospice movement. He writes of this story from the life and teaching of anthropologist Margaret Mead. Years ago, Margaret Mead was asked by a student what she considered to be the first sign of civilization in a culture. The student expected that Mead would talk about fish hooks or clay pots or grinding stones. But no. Mead said that the first sign of civilization in an ancient culture was a femur, a thigh bone, that had been broken and then had healed. Mead explained that in the animal kingdom, if you break your leg, you die. You cannot run from danger, get to the river for a drink, or hunt for food. You are meat for prowling beasts. No animal survives a broken leg long enough for the bone to heal. A broken femur that has healed is evidence that someone has taken time to stay with the one who fell, has bound up the wound, has carried the person to safety, and has tended the person through recovery. Helping someone else through difficulty is where civilization starts, Mead said. We are at our best when we serve others. Be civilized. Jesus commanded us to do what we are created by God to do, to be human, to be civilized, to love one another, to stay with one another, to tend each other through recovery, to help each other through difficulty. This is the commandment that Jesus gave. This is the example that Jesus set before us. Though we should always think about this, these days we are more keenly aware of those among us who are the caregivers, particularly now, those who serve in the medical arts. We have seen the commentaries and that have lauded them for putting themselves in harm's way, for disregarding their own needs in favor of the needs of others, and for literally washing the feet and the bodies of those from whom the rest of us have distanced ourselves. Though these servants number in the hundreds of thousands, at St. Andrew's we are privileged to know and give thanks for those who have followed Jesus' command. Jennifer Baker, Lisa Gold, Katie Holman, Audrey Ingersoll, Lisa McKibben, Heather Smith, and Kristen Zielinski. They do not wear superhero capes. They wear the cross of Jesus on their forehead. Because this is where Jesus' love led him, to the cross, so that everyone would know exactly the extent of God's love for us. This is how the good news is evaluated and measured and found to be true or not. Love one another. This is the gospel test. Amen.